Hello, my name is Matt Moore, and I'm giving you a little introduction into our topic, Helicobacter pylori, or what is commonly referred to as H. pylori. So what exactly is H. pylori, and how did it get found? And a couple of the different processes, disease prevention, and whatnot will be further discussed. But right now, we're going to figure out how this little bacteria was actually discovered. It was discovered by a doctor named Robin Warren, who was a pathologist in Perth, Australia. And this was back in 1979. So what happened was, after taking biopsies of his patient's stomach cells, he found this weird little obscure bacteria in about 50% of his patients. And he was curious about this because it was kind of a persistent thing that was happening. So he went down and started collecting data. It took him actually 2 years to go and finally find a whole bunch of these processes that are going on. So what he actually found was he found 20 examples that were negative and a bunch that were positive for the H. pylori bacteria. So he needed these to actually be able to go through and figure out what was going on. So the next thing he went through was going and trying to figure out how to publish this information, because he had stumbled across a very unique situation. So right at the same time, there was another doctor called Dr. Barry Marshall, and he was a gastroenterology registrar at the time. So basically what his job was is to go out and find people that are doing research on the gastrointestinal system and publish their papers. So he found and seeked out Dr. Warren because of his interesting topic, and they started collaborating together to figure out more insight into what exactly this bacteria was causing. So after much research, they found that there are actually a lot of other reports going on about this bacteria that was seen in the stomach cells. So they've actually found one study from Japan that showed the exact same cells that Dr. Warren had found, and from this data they further pursued trying to publish their information. It wasn't until 1982 that Dr. Marshall and many of his attempts were unsuccessful in trying to actually grow the H. pylori. See, what was happening was they were trying to incubate and isolate the H. pylori bacteria itself and let it grow. But the problem was it was only being put in the incubator for 48 hours, which is the common incubation period for most bacteria. What they failed to do was let it go for a few more days until the bacteria actually presented itself and was able to be further identified through gram staining. So the reason I told you about wasn't 48 hours, but the actual findings and how they figured this out was because at the exact same time they were doing the research, they came across a MRSA outbreak in the Royal Perth Hospital. So their bacteria cultures got put on the back burner while they were doing all the MRSA cultures. So about 8 days passed, and they finally figured and then remembered that the H. pylori was sitting in a petri dish. So they went and looked at it, did a gram stain, and lo and behold, they actually found that it was a gram-negative rod. So after all this, they figured out you can actually grow it, and it's something that is real. So from this data, in 1983, Dr. Marshall actually went to the UK to try and prove this measure. What he did was he went over to the UK and found patients and stuff over there and tested their stomach biopsies. And from this, they were able to determine that it wasn't just the strange bacteria found in Australians, it was also present in people of the UK as well. So this posed a very interesting question of what this actual bacteria was doing. So the medical community was actually very resistant to the fact that there was something going on with this bacteria in the stomach, because they really didn't have any proof, because of, as we know, Koch's postulates need to have a proven statement of whether or not you can isolate a bacteria and then grow it in another culture. So what's actually happening was that they had to go and administer self-infection because he was, Dr. Warren at the time decided that he was going to do it himself. So he went out and cultured the bacteria, drank the bacteria, had all these symptoms and causes that go along with having a gastric ulcer, and 8 days later he went and did a self-endoscopy, and he actually showed that he had the H. pylori bacteria growing in his stomach and was causing the ulcers. So this seemed to be proof enough that what was going on actually did happen. So from this, he went on to try to prove that the H. pylori bacteria was indeed causing the ulcers in the stomach, and not just the stress and other factors that were possibly leading up to this. So this all led up to 1994 National Institute of Health, which actually finally stated that the cause of H. pylori bacteria ulcers was due to the bacteria. So what they actually established was, in the medical field, okay, so this ulcer is being caused by the bacteria, not the stress-induced like they thought. So they went to the FDA to try to find solutions, and in 1996, the FDA finally approved the treatment of antibiotics to use as a treatment for gastric ulcers. So this is not that long ago, only a few years, and they were able to get it passed to the FDA. But it wasn't until 2005 that Dr. Warren and Dr. Marshall finally got recognition for the work that they did in this field. See, they were actually awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology for their work because of their diligent effort from 1979 all the way up until 1996. They kept with their following of this H. pylori bacteria because they knew it had an effect. So it was a very important thing that was going on. So now I'd like to pass the table on to my fellow collaborators, Yulia and Chelsea. They're going to go on to tell you a little bit about the etiology of H. pylori, the epidemiology, the pathology, the diagnosis, and prevention aspects. So I hope you enjoyed the little introduction here, and I'm going to pass the table on to them.